it's Deborah from Attic Lane, and today we've got an exciting job to do. So this is a book that we've made so far. If you've seen the earlier tutorials, this is the stage that we're at. We've got a beautiful cover, we've got a lined inside cover as well, and we've got our pages all sewn in place, ready for a bit more detail to be added. Then we have a pile of things that we've made that are ready to go into the book. So we've got some tags, we've got some envelopes, we've got some cute paper clips with some designs on them. So we've got a whole load of stuff there that now needs to be fitted into the book. On this part of my desk I've got some extras. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fit these things into my book, and then I'm going to show you some of these things. We're going to make some beads. These are just made from paper. So it's a paper that you've got in your stash if you've been collecting along with me. It's just a book page that's been cut down, rolled up and glued. And I'm also going to show you another use for paper clips. These things are really handy, and I'll show you how we can make beads, how we can attach other little plastic beads, maybe glass beads, to them. I've got some charms, we can add some charms to beads, and I'm going to show you how to make a sort of a bookmark from the beads that you've made. And then I've gathered some ribbons and some scraps of fabric, and I've cut them down because we're going to make a tassel for our book as well. This tag, this is in one of the earlier videos, and it's just made from scrunching up a load of papers. Now this tag, I know I want to go at the back of my book because I want there to be something of interest in the back of my book, and I've got a special way that I'm going to hold that in place, and I'll show you that when we get to that part. But when you're thinking about where you might want to put things, if you've got a page that's quite busy, like this one, this has lots of text and music and things on it, you don't want to put on a fussy tag like this tag, because then it won't stand out. You want contrast. My key tip when you're looking at doing these things is be mindful that you don't want to have a page that is too busy. If you're going to stick things in, try them first. So don't stick, so that's very, very similar. I want something that's going to make a contrast to the rest of those pages there. So this is where I might reach for one of my little envelopes. I'm a terrible faffer. This would take me absolutely forever if I was to film it all for you. So I just want to give you an idea of ways that you can think about adding the pieces that you've made into your journal. I'm not going to make you sit through me faffing and deciding where I'm going to put a piece of paper over another piece of paper. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through my book, I'm going to stick things in place, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to do a little flip through so you can see how I've organised my pieces. And then once we've done that, I'm going to move on to the little additional bits and bobs, like the little tags that are just fabric pieces. This is just cut from a piece of ribbon, and I'll take you through how we can make some extra zhuzh for your journal, make it a little bit more interesting with more texture and more colour and more shapes and sizes and all the good things. So I'm off to fill up my journal now. I've mostly managed to put the tags and inserts into my book. I have decided that I'm going to add a few little extra bits and bobs, and I'll show you those in a moment, but I want to show you one way that you can cannibalise an envelope. So I've taken an envelope and I've cut off the top piece, and I've cut the middle section in half, and I'm just going to finish cutting that down because I'm going to use it to make some corner pockets. So all I need to do is try and cut this off on the same sort of angle as that one. That's pretty close, and I'll do the same with this one. Okay, that's not bad. And then I can add these as little corners to tuck things in into my journal. So let me show you the other additions that I've made. There's a couple of pages where I want to dull down the all of the printed page. I want to give myself somewhere else that I can write. So one of the first things that I've done is I've taken, this is just another piece of tea stain paper, and I folded it in half, and I've put the doily on the top just so you can see that it's a little pocket. And what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to sew on a little piece of lace along the top there, and then I'm going to glue that into place, and then I've got somewhere that I can add one of my envelopes. I've also cut down a few pieces of the tea stain paper, and I've just tucked it into one of the pockets. That does two things. That reminds me there's a pocket there, because there's quite a few little tuck spaces and pockets and things, and I can't remember where all of them are. And I've put in one of my little notepads, I've added that in sideways. It doesn't always have to be straight up and down, you can play with the angles a little bit. I've done a similar thing on this side as well. So I had a tiny little overhang here, so I've added a piece of paper. Now what this also does is it means that it breaks up the body of the text. It makes it a bit more interesting, and it also means I've got more places to write. When I'm using my junk journals, although I have left blank pages in here for writing or adding photographs or whatever it may be, I quite like the idea of writing little notes almost to myself, little memories to myself, and then tucking them away, because then when you come back to the book and you're pulling things out, you say, well, what does that do? Does that pull out there? Is that a thing? And then if there's text in it, it's a bit like rediscovering a memory that you've forgotten about. I just find that a delightful way to use junk journals. I've taken another piece of tea stain paper and I've wrapped it around this page here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off the corners on both sides, and I'm going to glue it into place. And again, I've got another space to tuck things, or I've got another space where I can add receipts or my personal ephemera. And for the rest of it, I've managed to find spaces for all of the extra things that we've made. And these paper clips that are the hearts on one side and the kisses on the other side, they're great for adding in little tags wherever you may want them, and they will also grab two things on the same page. And I've done this in the front where I've put one of my largest tags, and this is a tag that has got 3 little tuck spots in there, and the decorated paper clip holds my little envelope with the writing paper in it and the tag on that side. I'm going to find spots to glue these in, so I'm going to find little spaces to finish gluing and sewing and stitching and everything, putting everything into the book, and then we'll come to the beads. I've made those additions to the book, so let's have a little flip through. I've added some, I've broken up the text here with a corner of an envelope, and I've also added half of a doily, and I've popped in some papers, and I've used a little butterfly stamp that I have to just add some interest to those papers, and also to remind myself that that is paper that I can use and it actually opens out. So there's plenty of space there for adding photographs or private memories. I've added my pocket. This actually has got two. It's got a pocket at the back and it also has a pocket at the front, and I've sewn a piece of lace over my doily. I've added my envelope in sideways here. I've added some little tabs. This is just a piece of ribbon that I had. It's really pretty, and it just adds extra colour to the top of the book, so that when the book is closed, I quite like it when there's things hanging out of the top and the side. It just makes it really interesting. You just want to pick it up. It's intriguing, I think. You just want to see what it's all about. I've popped one of my tags in the pocket there. This is held in place with some glue at the top and a little fabric tab. I've sewn an envelope on here, so this is one of the envelopes that we made in an earlier video. There's no gluing, it's just origami, and I've added the tag to the pocket. I've popped my words. I'd had some words already, and I've popped them on the front of an extra little corner I've added on this page, and there's a fabric tab there. And I had already added a paper tag to the side of this page, and I've decided just to, I had a square of lace and I decided just to wrap it around the tab and see what it looks like, and I like that. It's very pretty. Another tag in a little pocket at the bottom of the page, an envelope that's held in place with the heart and the kiss paper clip that we altered in one of the previous videos, and it's holding in a tag on this side as well. This side holds one of the little booklets ready for writing on, and again is held in place with a kiss and a heart, and the heart also holds one of the Glassine bags that we made from the cereal pack bag that actually held the cereal. Make sure you blow all the sort of dust out of those as well, because when I first opened it I had cereal dust everywhere. I've got one of my little tag books that we made in an earlier video as well, and that's tucked in there, and one of my origami envelopes onto a paper clip just attached at the top of that page. Another fabric tab. That takes us to the back of the book, where I have my very elaborate tag ready to be added in that final page. And that's turning into a nice chunky journal. This is why I didn't absolutely ram it with pages, because I want to allow additions, and we do have more additions. This isn't finished by any stretch, because in the next video we're going to be talking about where you find ephemera, where you find printed ephemera. Can you make your own? Yes, you can. Can you find lots of places to download images and stuff like that that are free for commercial use and don't have any copyright issues? Yes, we can, and I'm going to show you a really useful resource for that sort of thing. I want to show you what you can make if you don't have very much equipment. You can still get a beautiful result, and then if you do have some equipment, if you have some beads and if you have some charms and maybe a bit of elastic, and if you have some little wire tools, I want to show you what else you can do as well. So let's start with the beads. This is very obviously just paper from a book. I hope you can see that's got words all around it. Move these to one side. Now that starts off life as a piece of paper. I've cut this down already. There's no set sizes, just cut it as wide as you want it to be, and then maybe about as half. What we're going to do is we're going to fold this in, so it's not going to, the bead isn't, we're not going to roll the bead the whole length of this. And get yourself something like a bamboo skewer. They're good, but you want something that has got an even shape. You don't want, I tried with a paintbrush, but they sort of narrow at one end and then widen out. You really want something that's a consistent width all the way along. This is my pokey tool, so it's ideal because it's got, I don't know why it's got a rubber thing on this end, because that's just an end, but it's very useful because it holds, it means that I've got a good guide for my paper when I'm rolling it. So the way that I do mine, to save me having to roll the whole length of that paper, is I fold it over to begin with, and I add a bit of glue. I'm still using my 3-in-1. I love this stuff. It's really good fun. Although it removes nail varnish. It must be something to do with the acetone or the acetate that I think is the base for this. So I just hold the piece of paper in place with the glue, and I position my rolly tool, and I don't glue it to begin with because I want to make sure that I've got the roll going the right way. And it's really useful using printed paper because you can immediately see if you've gone on the wonk. I want to roll this and keep it as tight as I can because I don't want a flappy bead, and you'll see what I mean about a flappy bead if I get it wrong. I'll try. I don't know if I should get it wrong to show you a flappy bead or get it right to show you how it should look. But once I've got my little roll and the paper has got that little curved memory, I curve up the first little bit, and I curve it a little way up the page before I add any glue, because I don't want to add too much glue and have it seeping out all over the place. So I add a little bit of glue and then I roll it. Now at this point it's a good idea to try and pull this top piece away as you roll, and that will help keep the page or the paper nice and tight. And this actually isn't going too badly, so I'm not going to be able to show you a bad bead, a flappy bead. I'm going to add another layer of glue. I'm not adding it all the way to the end because I want to hold the end as I roll, and if I've got glue on the end then I'll end up sticking myself to the bead, and that's not part of the plan. So that's nice and tight. So now I can add a final row of glue. And roll it around and hold it nice and tightly in place. And when you're sure that's stuck, take it off, whatever it is that you've been using to roll it around. Now that's obviously quite a long bead, and these beads are not so long, so I'm going to cut this down. But before I do that, I want to show you something else. So you can cut it down, so that you have just words on your bead. You can do that. I want to show you something else. Now, if you get tissue paper, you can roll that around the bead to give it some colour, oops, some colour interest. I've got too much glue going on. You can roll that around the bead to give the bead some colour interest, as I have done in this bead here. What's nice about this is when you get close up to the bead, you can see, because it's tissue paper, let me see if I can show you this, you can still see the letters, the words underneath it, so it gives it lots of lovely layers. And we're going to add another layer to this as well. So I've got some tissue paper, which is just about long enough. This is actually tissue paper that I've printed with an image. That's for another video, but that's good fun. And all I'm going to do is add some glue. I'm actually going to add it onto my long bead. I'm going to add a row down the bead. I'm just going to glue the tissue paper around it. And then when I get to the other end, I'll add another layer of glue. And as I said, if you don't have tissue paper, it doesn't matter, because you can still make a beautiful bead just from the papers that we found, our vintage books. So, once that's done, I'm going to cut off the excess tissue. I'm going to smooth it down and make sure it's all stuck in place. I'll trim off the excess off the end of the bead as well. You can do that with, you can use a paper napkin or pattern tissue, whatever you have, because this is all about recycling, upcycling, using what you have and being creative with it. There we go. And you can still see it's got a pattern on the top, and you can still see the music underneath. I think that's a beautiful effect. Really, really lovely and pretty. So now I'm going to cut this in half, about there. Because it's only paper, and because that vintage book paper tends to be quite soft, this is easy to do. Okay. Splendid. Now, to add a bit of extra interest, you can add a little line of lace around your bead, or you can add 2 layers of ribbon, contrasting ribbon around the centre of your bead, or you can add a word. These are words, if you remember before, we talked about printing off your own words that are appropriate to whatever journal you're making and cutting them out and sticking them inside your book. And this is a bead that has a little word added around it, and on this one I've got a little bee charm on the bottom, and I've added the word bee on the top. So, here is one of my bits of paper with my words printed on, and I'm going to take the word flower. I'm going to take a brown pen and draw a box around that word. Now that's not because I'm going to forget which word I'm going to cut out. Looks like a big reminder. It's because when I cut this out, it will have a border. And trial and error has shown me that drawing your box before you cut your word out is much easier, because then it does get a wee bit fiddly. Now that I have my word, I'm going to make sure that I have my bead with the lettering underneath the right way up and I can see it. And I'm going to curve my word around to see if it's too long, which they usually are, because most words are, you know, you're not going to get many 3-letter words for your journals, and if you want to vary it a bit, if you want longer words, you're going to need to find a way to attach them. So all I do is twist it around the bead so that it will fit, and then again the paper has sort of maintained that memory of that curve, so that makes it easier for me to secure it in place on the bead. And I take some glue and then stick it on the bead, and I'll have to hold it for a moment or two to make sure that that stays. You can stick it onto one of our paper clips that has the curls in the top, because that will stop the bead from falling away. So I'm going to show you this with 2 paper clips. These are the ones that I was using before. I've got a long one and I've got a little one, and I think the little one is maybe too short for me simply to pull out, but we'll see. The long one is there as a standby. With the first of your paper clips, open it out. This is where you would find wire tools or jewellery tools really useful. Okay, so that's absolutely ideal. Now I'm going to assume that you don't necessarily have a whole bunch of beads. I don't know why you'd have these sorts of tools and not have beads. Bear with me. And I'm going to do a big loop on the bottom of this paper clip, because it needs to be big enough to stop the bead falling off the end. There we go. That bead's going nowhere. And then I'm going to cut this down. I'm going to leave myself about 1 centimetre. I'll find that piece later on. I usually find it in my cups of tea or something. There's usually a cup of tea by the side of my desk as I'm working, and I find bits of paper in it. I find lace in it. I go to take a slurp and it's full of something vintagey, something inky. There is our bead, and it's housed on a paper clip. I think this paper clip will be okay. The next thing to do is to take your paper clip and put a curve on it. So this is a wee bit fiddly to show you, but it's basically what we did earlier in the course, in the one of the earlier videos, and we put a loop on our paper clip to make it decorative, and this time we're putting a loop on our paper clip to make it functional and practical. There we go. And then put the bead on before you do the next loop. So I'm putting the bead top on there, and then I take the end and turn it around so that that is also secured in place. Actually, that's quite nice. I like that. It's a wee bit wonky. It's a wee bit different. But you see, if you're doing it carefully, if you're doing it correctly, this is how your paper clip will end up, with these 2 very neat little loops. I think I was taking my time a bit more. If you do it on the wonk, you get that. But actually, that's fine. It's absolutely fine. It's a little bit more decorative. It's a little bit more interesting. Just make sure that they sit nice and flat, because that'll make it easier when you attach it to your page. So then you get your book and you select a page. Let's select this one. And then you add your bead to your book by putting your paper clip on the side like that. You can also do it at the top, of course. Don't do it right to the edge of the page. Leave a little loop hanging out, and then your bead will sit nicely on the edge of your page. Now, the other thing that I wanted to show you that you can do with beads is you can turn them into a little, like a little bookmark for your journal. This is on elastic, which has simply been tied. So I've added my beads, the homemade beads with the words on them. I've added some spacer beads, which I happen to have in my stash. These are the silver ones. And I've added a little pearl bead, which I had. That came off a piece of clothing, I think. It came off a cardigan. So I've used what I have around me, and I've made that, because then this is how I can connect I can hold my big tag in place, like that. So I hold my tag in place with the bare elastic on the inside, and then on the back I've got my beads. It's a really nice little detail to add to your book. It's tassel time, and to make my tassel, all I've done is gathered some random scraps that I found attached to clothes labels. For example, this came off a clothing tag. I've got some twine that's got some green through it. I've got a couple of bits of ribbon that we made earlier on in the course, one of the earlier videos. I've got some of this sort of gauzy stuff, and I've just cut a thin strip of this. I've got some muslin that I've whenever I make marmalade, I always have some muslin in the house ready for that. So I've got some that I've just cut in a long strip, and I've folded it in half, and I'll cut that loop off, so that then I have 2 strands of that. And I've got some other little ribbons that I just had kicking about. My extra that I'm going to include is 2 little bits of green. It's barely ribbon, it's just like some edging stuff. And I've got 2, no I haven't, I've got 4 charms on the ends. I've got a flower and a bird, and then I've got the same bird, and I've got a dragonfly. And I've got these charms because the theme of our book is botanical, so that's why I'm using the charms that I'm using. Doesn't that look that just looks so sweet? You just want to dive in and see what's going on in that book. I think considering it's made from scraps, it's just terrific. Oh, anyway. Okay, so to make the twine, to make the tassel, you gather up your ribbon and fold it in half. And if it's any more difficult than that, I can't manage to make it more difficult than that. Tie it up with a piece of twine or a piece of ribbon, or whatever you want to tie it with, a little clip. So I'm just going to hold it like that for the moment while I go off and get another bit of ribbon. This is a bit of ribbon that I've dyed using some ink stains in exactly the same manner as I did this, except that with this ribbon we used our tea stain, and this has been coloured using an ink. So I've still left myself with a loop because I still need to make this attach. I've still got my clip reserved because I'm going to need that to hold the whole thing in place while the glue hardens. While I've been waiting for this to dry, I've been adding some beads onto the ends of my little dangly, thready, lacy bits. So I've got a nice interesting tassel now. I've got 3 of my beads on it. I've tied this onto the twine that I used to tie up the top, and I've got a couple of my beautiful little tissue paper beads as well tied on. So if I release this now, it hasn't, the clip hasn't glued to the top of the tassel, and the tassel's got a nice clean finish to the top of it. If you have some of these light bulb style safety pins, you can just pick up that where you tied your bundle together with your thread, and you could do it like that. You can also take a piece of twine, thread it through a nice fat needle, and you're not sewing anything, you're just using the needle to slip it under that knot where you've tied it. So you can do it that way, and a double knot to make sure it stays in place, and then that can be attached anywhere I want in my book. I'm just having a quick look at our book. It's really coming together beautifully, and actually there were a couple of things that I forgot. I forgot to tell you about these. One of the subscribers, Jenny, this is you, you know you're the guilty party here, very, very kindly sent me some little tags, and they were made like this, and they had some little eyelets in the top, and I thought, oh, that'd be so sweet to use, we can put some of our little words in there. So I've just got those little tags as an extra added interest, so thank you, Jenny, for that tip and that idea. And the book is really coming together beautifully. It's not finished, we've still got more to do. We need to add ephemera, and that's what's going to be coming up in the next video. So thank you very much for your company as always. I hope you'll be able to join me next time, and in the meantime, take care.